Hey, what's up, guys? I wanted to make a video and talk about how I opened the door for having a spiritual kind of conversation at my first visit with a patient. I think this is pretty specific to like primary care where this would be useful. There's a lot of evidence that spiritual care plays a big role in people's overall health. And so it's cool that not only is there it's important to me and my life to go through spiritual sides of things with patients, but there's a lot of evidence that addressing spiritual care has a positive outcome in people's health. So the way that I do this has been really, I think, something I've developed over time, but in general, I would describe it as that I open the door at my first establishing care visit with a patient, and I don't press and I don't pressure. So it's important that we let patients be in charge of their own health care, and we acknowledge that they have free will, and we should value that free will, and we should acknowledge that people have different belief systems. And so there's a way of doing this as a Christian that I think has helped me to open the door, but not be pressing on the patient so that they're uncomfortable or anything like that. And the way that I do this is when I go through my patient history, I have kind of a generalized way that I go through patient histories, and I start with, kind of their previous providers and specialists, and I go through medical history, and I go through medications and all these things that go into a patient history. And towards the end of that, I include, and I will usually present it in this way. So I like to ask my patients when I first meet them, we are a faith-based organization at my company. And so I like to ask my patients if you have any spiritual beliefs at all. And then this opens the door for them to tell me, yes, I do. So a lot of them are surprised because they're not used to being asked this by a healthcare provider, which is okay. So the discomfort, I've gotten used to of that. But some of them are very excited that I asked this question. They're excited to tell me about how they're a Christian and how they are happy that I asked this question. And then some of them kind of tell me, what does that mean? And so if I get that kind of a response, like, what does that mean? I typically go to say, well, if I asked you the question, do you believe in God? What would you say to that? And some of them would say, well, yeah, I believe in God, or I believe in a higher power. Or they'll say, no, I don't. And so when they respond that way, my way of continuing the conversation is, well, thanks for sharing that. I just want you to know that a big reason why I like to work here is because I'm a Christian. And not everybody that works here is Christian, but it's a big part of why I like to work here. And I like to have conversations about it, and I like to answer questions about Christianity if I can. And if patients want me to, I pray with them. And so I just wanted you to know that that's a big part of why I like to work here. And this is typically met with a positive response. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Oh, that's kind of cool. Sometimes it's like not much of a response, and I kind of keep that in mind. So I'm just opening the door and seeing what the patient says. And then I usually also like to include in this, as part of not being a pressure on them and not pressing, and I say that specifically. Hey, look, I just like to let you know that's why I like to work here. I'm not going to bring it up again unless it's something that you kind of lead. So I would love if you did do that because I like talking about it, but I'll kind of leave it in your hands. So let me know. And then typically they'll say, oh, thank you for offering that. That's very nice. Or, something along those lines. So that's a way of taking a spiritual history very briefly. And as a Christian, it's a way, because we don't want to be pressing like you need to believe in Christianity. Obviously, if we understand what Jesus has done for us as Christians, we want people to understand that they can be forgiven, that they can have a relationship with their Creator, that they can have a new life that is full of purpose, eternal purpose. And so we obviously maybe want that, but we also allow them to make their free choice. And God also gives us that freedom because He loves us enough to let us choose whether we want to believe in Him or not. So that's just how I open the door spiritually with my patients. And I don't want to pressure them. And I want them to not feel too uncomfortable when I bring this up. It's a very brief conversation, and the way that I just mention it is it usually works very well. And then when I see them again, sometimes they'll be excited to, I've had a couple patients that were kind of weird, like they didn't have a great response where they were like, what do you mean? And then when I saw them the next time, it's like I could tell they had been thinking about that, and that was something they were excited to talk about with me and brought it up with me. And so it's been a cool thing to watch, and I feel like God uses me on a regular basis through these very small, brief encounters to influence people and to help them, answer questions, or patients sometimes remind me to pray with them if I'm at the end of the appointment and I'm busy and they're like, are we going to pray? And so it's kind of cool. So that pretty much, I think, concludes this one. And thank you guys for checking this out.